Thank you for joining me today to discuss one of the most fascinating and important stories in the history of religion and mythology, the fall of Lucifer. Now, we all know the basics of the story, that Lucifer was once a bright and shining angel, beloved by God and adored by his fellow celestial beings. But then something went wrong. Something changed, and Lucifer fell from grace, cast out of heaven and into the darkness below. But what exactly happened to Lucifer? What was his life like before the fall, and what caused him to rebel against God and embrace sin and corruption? And what about after the fall? What did Lucifer do, and how did he feel about his own damnation? These are the questions that we will explore today as we delve deep into the story of the fall of Lucifer and try to unravel its many mysteries. First, let's talk about Lucifer before the fall. According to some ancient texts, he was one of the most powerful and beautiful angels in heaven, with a voice like a choir of angels and a mind like a diamond. He was ambitious and driven, always striving to prove himself and rise above his peers. But as time went on, something began to change within Lucifer. He grew discontented with his role in the hierarchy of heaven and began to chafe under God's authority. He saw himself as a natural leader and believed that he could do a better job of running the universe than God himself. Slowly but surely, Lucifer began to gather followers among the other angels, promising them that they too could achieve greatness if they joined his cause. He spun tales of corruption and injustice in heaven, claiming that God was holding them back and stifling their potential. At first, many angels were wary of Lucifer's grandiose claims, but over time, more and more began to be swayed by his charisma and persuasive arguments. They began to question God's authority and rebel against his commands, following Lucifer into ever deeper levels of rebellion and sin. And then came the moment that would change everything, the war in heaven. According to some ancient texts, Lucifer and his followers engaged in a brutal battle with God and his angels, hurling bolts of lightning and pillars of flame at one another in a titanic struggle for supremacy. In the end, of course, God emerged victorious, casting Lucifer and his followers out of heaven and into the abyss below. As they fell, they were consumed by flames and racked with agony, the pain of their rejection and damnation searing their very souls. And that brings us to the afterlife of Lucifer. In many ways, the story of his fall is the story of a man who was consumed by pride and ambition, and who refused to humble himself before God. He became a creature of darkness and sin, delighting in the suffering and pain of the world, and tempting mortals to sin at every turn. But even in his damnation, there is something fascinating and tragic about Lucifer. He was once a beloved and powerful being, filled with all the glory and majesty of heaven. And yet in the end, he chose to rebel against God and embrace sin, leading himself and countless others down the path of destruction. So, what can we learn from the story of Lucifer's fall? For me, it is a cautionary tale about the dangers of pride and ambition, and a reminder of the importance of humility and obedience in the face of God's will. It is a story that asks us to reflect on our own choices and to consider the consequences of our actions. Thank you for joining me today, and may God bless us all.